What's up, guys? It is Landon Oliver with Team wnax, and we are here to go over Ben's deck post Suda. He got first place at our case tournament here. That was at our locals with Mitsurugi RYZEAL.
Best deck.
But yeah, let's just get his thoughts before the YCS and get into this. Anything you want to say before this gets started, Ben?
Yeah, for sure. So, like, I think this deck has been, like, relatively, I shouldn't say solved, but people are more getting an idea of, like, the ranges and stuff for the deck. My biggest inspiration for this list at least was Triff. I've been watching a ton of his content since he started doing a lot of matches on like DB and stuff. So shout out to him especially. But as I just played the deck more, I've kind of like adapted to my playstyle, I think. And so I think this list is like a representation of that. I don't know if this is the exact list I would take to Orlando. Probably something similar, but we can kind of go over that as like the deck profile goes on. Just some of my thoughts as I played the deck over time. So
all right, let's get into it.
Yeah, so we'll just start with the RYZEAL names. 3X, like this is just the best start of the deck. It's primarily the reason I actually like this deck over Fiendsmith, because this being your only RYZEAL starter in your hand in the Fiendsmith deck is just really awkward sometimes, obviously, because of the rank 4 lock. But in this deck, it's just free. Like, you just don't care. So, he's just a great start in this deck. So, that's pretty standard. And then 2 Ice. So, this is the one that's, like, kind of up for debate in this deck. I've seen anywhere from 1 to 3, which is kind of crazy. I think 3 is a lot better in hand trap lists, where you don't necessarily have like Nadir that gets you into your ritual plays and stuff. So you just need as many ways to play the game as possible. So to like a hand trap list, I think 3 is probably correct. But I'm taking the board breaker approach, or at least I did for the case tournament. So I think 2 is good because like you have 1 to search in the regular combo, and then you have a second one you can grab to be an extender as well. If you open up any of the cards for duo drive, so that's really good. And then 1 sword and 1 node. You never need more than 1 sword. I've never missed more copies, which is kind of weird. Like, it took me a little bit while to get used to it, but like honestly, you just don't need more names in this deck. Like, the thing is with this deck, it's not really so much a RYZEAL deck. You're just using the RYZEAL cards to facilitate your Mitsurugi engine, because those are the cards I really want to end on at the end of the day, because those are the broken cards in this deck. Yeah. And then for the Mitsurugi names, we have 3 Saji. I know some people have gone back and forth between playing 2 or 3 this card. I think 3 works really well in this deck, considering you play 2 Ice. So you just
want to explain these just because they're new?
Yeah, well? Sure, that's fine, absolutely. Yeah. So Saji just has an effect if he's normal or special, or if he's attributed. He just searches for a Mitsurugi spell or trap card. And then he also has a hidden effect, which a lot of people actually don't realize this about the card, that if one of your reptiles will be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can tribute him instead, which doesn't come up a ton, but we'll get to it later. There's one of the rituals that you actually will summon this back with, or summon this back, yeah. And then you can use it to protect your guys by battle, so like that comes up a lot. So 3 copies of that. And then 1 copy of Kusanagi. You never need more copies of this. 1's like the perfect number, always has been. This guy just has the same triggers as Sanji, where he's normal, special, attributed. He can just add back a Mitsurugi card from your graveyard, which in the combo, basically what you do a lot of the time. And I'll just go ahead and explain this as I show the other cards. So you have 2 Omno, and then 1 of the Futsu. So basically what you do is a ritual spell. It has 2 separate ways to ritual summon. So the first one, you can summon from hand by tributing reptiles from your deck, or you can summon from your deck using reptiles from your hand or field. So the idea is like once you ritual summon this guy on the first one, you send this, use the effect, add back the ritual spell, and you contribute this to summon this one from deck. And since this one was tributed, it'll add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand and then bring itself back. Okay. So yeah, just to explain these in a little bit more detail, other than the combo, obviously. So Amna just has the effect when he's special summoned. He just essentially Raigekis your opponent's board. His second effect is if your opponent activates a card or effect, it's negated, or they can choose to discard a card. So it's either or. Usually they're obviously going to discard the card if they can afford to do it. If their hand's empty, however, then this is just a free Omni negate, which doesn't come up a ton, but there are game situations where like they're just desperate to stop you from playing the game because this deck has so much gas. So they're low on card advantage. The hand rip in this gets like really good, and it's really great going first because like your opponent's worst case essentially always playing with like a 5-card hand going second, which is great. Yeah. And then Futsu, I know some lists have started cutting this. I still think it's really good for the grind game, especially when you know your opponent's on a list that may not be on Bestials game 1. This guy just has the same effect as the Omno, where it's tributed. You can add a Mitsurugi card from deck to hand and then special it back. Or you can just add 1. So if it's not properly ritual summoned, if it's tributed, you can still just add a name, or a card I should say. And then the broken effect of this card is while it's on the field, when your opponent special summons a monster, once per chain, you can special summon a reptile from your graveyard. So the idea is in this deck is basically your setup. If you have the Mitsurugi board, we won't show the RYZEAL cards, but let's say you end on Mitsurugi board, the idea is you could just spam back all these bodies. So like, let's say you have 2 of these and like a Kusanagi. Now it's your board. Like this is gonna add you 1 back from grave for this follow up. This will add you from deck for follow up. These will get tribute and add you another 2. So like, you're gonna have like 7 cards in your hand. The opponent turn 3, assuming this all resolves, which is just like insane follow up. Like people like talk about how good a follow up like the Fiendsmith deck has a lot of times, but the follow up in this deck is just like bad stupid. Like you just be adding infinite cards for like no reason. It's actually just unfair. This we'll get to later. We'll just go over some of the non-engine. So since we took the board breaker approach, these are the only 6 hand traps we play. Other than, I guess, we'll include the Imperm. I'll explain why there's one in here in a little bit, but I decided to play these 6 Charmies in the main deck. It just checks your opponents and on half boards. And this deck just eats half boards for, it's like, just destroys them. So that's like the theory behind this, right? It's like you just want them to end on like a half board and then you just crack the half board. The one Imperm, it is a hand trap, but very rarely do we use it for that. It's actually just in there as a 1/4 thrust target, so we can set it going first, or it's just a card we can top deck going second, or draw into. That just is the board breaker as well. So those, and then for the other non-engine, we have 3 talents and 3 thrusts in the main deck. So yeah, these board breakers is really good, and especially in this deck, this card like adds Bonfire, adds Nadir Servant, like adds talents, adds just so many stupid cards. This deck is just like absurd in this deck. The only thing I would probably switch in this, if I were to play the board breaker version, these would probably just move to the side, and then the main deck the droplets. The droplet is actually just infinitely better game 1 because they're not always going to blind dweller you. So your droplets is actually getting like way more value than it normally would. And then also this card is just like really, really whack into the Malice deck, in my opinion, where the droplet's like pretty well rounded in all the matchups in the format. So. And also just not dead going first either, which is also a big thing. Like you just want your hands to be as playable as possible if you go first.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. So that was the rest of the deck. And then for spells, so that's 3 Bonfire. That's pretty standard. 3 Nadirs with the Maximus.
Probably the MVP, no?
Yeah, I'd probably say so. I mean, to be honest, by the time you get to the point you resolve this card, you probably just win the game. Because the thing is like, either you do this as your last play on top of your end board, or they hand trap you like for their whole entire life savings. And then you just have this as your last play, and your opponent's like, oh my gosh, he's gonna pot a greed and now end on like the Omno too. And it's just like, it's too much. Yeah. It's just too much for your opponent to be able to deal with, especially when you're not playing the mirror. Like, so if you play the mirror, a good thing to note for newer players, you always want to set up Dweller before you activate this, game 1, if you know it's a mirror match. If I know it's a mirror, games 2 and 3, I actually typically slide this out. Just because you only get value out of this end. Once you start setting with this though, especially going first, you're just giving them free cards a lot of time. And I'm not a huge fan of that. Especially when there's just so many good cards we could be siding in the mirror match. So, and then for the rest of the spells, 3 Ritual and 3 Quick Play spells. So I kind of explained Ritual earlier. Explain it again real quick. Basically, you can Ritual summon from hand by using materials from deck, or you can Ritual summon from deck by using materials from your hand or field. Oh, and then the summon from hand as well. You can also use materials on your hand or field. So, like, I don't play in this list, but you can play Night Sword Serpent. So if you like brick on the Night Sword Serpent, you can still tribute out of your hand, even if you are summoning from hand. So that's pretty cool.
Custom card.
This is, yeah, I don't know, like, okay, this card I love, don't get me wrong, but the fact that they made this one Ultra and this Common is actually just criminal, because this card I actually think is better than this. Yeah. Like, it doesn't go up in this list, but like in the hand trap list, it'll come up a lot where like you just open like Saji plus 4 hand traps, and like this card just enables you to get like infinite fall off. Like this card is stupid. Plays around like Bestials. To explain what it does, so basically, quick play spell, you activate it. If you can choose to tribute a reptile or not. If you choose not to, you can activate one of these 2 effects. If you tribute a reptile, you can use both the effects. So the first effect just reads that you can add a Mitsurugi monster from your deck to your hand. Already really good. Second effect being is you can special summon a Mitsurugi from your hand or graveyard, and then you take 800 damage. But the best part about this card, since you can apply the effects in sequence if you tribute a reptile, it's really broken because like let's say you open the Night Sword Serpent if you choose to play it. You can like activate this, tribute Night Sword Serpent, add Saji, and then special with Saji from your hand that you just added. Like that's just like crazy.
Yeah. Level 4 extender, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then for some of the bricks of the deck, we just do the RYZEAL Cross on the trap. I think this is just necessary on top of the end boards. And like, yeah, just being able to stop stuff like in any part of the chain link is just really broken. It just makes the end boards really unfair. And then the Omni Negate, especially since we don't play hand traps, sometimes you just need that extra fortification on your board and extra interruptions. And like the other part of this card that I don't think people understand is the graveyard effect is just insane turn 3. Like if you get to that point and they do chip away your board quite a bit, just banish this for free and either get follow up or you just summon the Omno back, which is just great. To explain what this one does, basically all you do, tribute a level 5 or higher reptile monster, just an Omni Negate. And it doesn't negate the activation or destroy the card, so it just negates the effect, which is, or it does destroy the card, but it just negates the effect, which is great. So like if you negate things like talents, they just can't activate another one and bag you with that.
Yeah.
And then the graveyard effect, you can't activate both in the same turn, unfortunately, both the effects. But the second effect is you can just banish it and then bring back a reptile or a Mitsurugi from the graveyard. I don't even know if it is reptile. I think it is just Mitsurugi. Yeah, it's a reptile. So if you did play Ognoided cards, you could theoretically bring back an Ognoided. I've never played those cards, but yeah, but yeah, in theory, yeah, you're almost always bringing like Omno or like some sort of level 4 for follow-up.
Yep. And how many cards in the main?
42.
Okay, 42.
I think the breaker list plays somewhere around like 41 to 43 in most lists, so I think that's like pretty standard.
Okay.
So, extra deck, we have 2 King of the Fair Limbs. I've seen some lists cut this down to 1, but sometimes 2 comes up in the grind. I've been back and forth on it, but to be honest, you have the space for it, and I don't think any cards you're playing instead of a second copy of this like come up enough to justify cutting it. So, 2 twins. Yo, whoever at Konami made this card, like, you're crazy. This card is broken. Like, this card is a custom card. The favorite part about this card in this deck particularly that I don't see enough people do, it's like turn 3, if you like have an extra Nadir or you top deck into one, you can Nadir send this and then like bring back your detonator from graveyard or whatever else you need, which is just like so stupid. It's like, oh yeah, your extra deck locked. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna summon XTs anyways. Like it just doesn't matter. And then also this comes up a lot in the 1-card combos, like with X and stuff. So, and then 2 detonator. 2 detonators pretty necessary. You actually usually only summon 1 most of the time, I found, but the second one you just want to send off the X effect if you want to go for duo drive on your first summon. So you have a material underneath it for cross. But again, 2, it comes up in the grind sometimes. 2 is just the correct number. I would never play anything differently for that. And then 1 duo drive. You could play more, but we don't play enough RYZEAL names to justify playing a second one. And then like worst case, it can't get Bistil or anything, so you could just like send an Eclipse and then bring this back anyways. But very rarely is this ever coming up like turn 3, or you're ever wanting to make a second one. Dweller. Okay. So first off, this card should probably get banned. This card is like really, really degenerate in this format. But a funny story about this card is I played a Fiendsmith Tenpai player, and we got in this like really weird grind where like I kind of knew what his Tenpai engine he had available to him was. And he was just kind of going through the Fiendsmith stuff every turn, and we're in this really weird grind game. And there was really a point that I had summoned this and brought it back 2 times after he added it with twins. So I'm just literally looping it for like multiple turns in the grind game. Like this card was actually just so stupid. He was actually getting tilted. Like he's has engravers and stuff engraved that just don't do anything. And then Dugaris. This card is necessary for like the 1-card combos with ice. If you want to get your Mitsurugi engine online. Also just like a good generic rank 4. So I really like the card. It comes up. Exton Knight, I see a lot of people only say this comes up against Malice, which is true. I think that is like when it's coming up like most of the time. But funny enough, in the last round of Swiss, my opponent, he didn't have an opportunity to search for the trap card because he had to play out a really weird hand. It's a mirror match. And basically what I had done is I was able to bait out his RYZEAL XYZ monster so he didn't have cross negate live. So I was able to slap this on board and like clear like most of his board, and then like still played from there. Like this card just it works really well with the decks since you're already playing board breakers. It just has that same board breaker approach. So I do really like this card. It doesn't come up a lot, but I feel like when you do summon it, it is like the difference between you winning or losing the game. Aggregator, amazing card, especially when you're almost starting with X in this deck like every single time. So that's great. And then we just play the Nadir targets. Yes, sir. Starlight. I need a Starlight for this. That'd be sick. But yeah, these are like the standard 4 you play in this deck for Nadir. I've like messed around with other things, but like these are just like the best 4 by far. It's like not even really close. So I definitely wouldn't change this. I think the extra deck's like almost perfect. Like if I were going to take this deck to like the YCS tomorrow, it's probably the exact same extra deck I would play realistically.
Okay.
Side deck. 3 Lancia. It doesn't need a nice explanation. Card's just like a turn skip for Malice. It's just a stupid card. I did opt to play 3 Ash in the side deck. This is mostly just in there to take out like stuff like droplets or like Molt Charmies when you go first to stop them from Molt Charming you. And then like worst case, if they don't Molt Charming you, now it's just like a hand trap, which is sick. So like it doubles almost as like a call by and a hand trap as well, which I really like. There's that, and then we have the other 3 Molt Charmies, the Meows. Again, just for Malice. You just usually how this deck works with Silent Patterns is you just play the 6 best Charmies in whatever matchup you're playing when you go second. So like obviously you want to include this in the deck because like this plus Meows is just so good against Malice. It just checks what they're doing most of the time. And then I had the droplets on the side, but this definitely should be main decked instead of the Perulia, and then just move the Perulia in the spot. So, yeah, if you want to make the list, I would suggest probably doing that. But this card was good. I think this card in your Breaker version has to be somewhere in your list, just because you need some sort of way to do with Chaos Angel. Because, like, fun fact, like, this deck has no in-engine outs to, like, Light Dark Chaos Angel. So, like, that's just stupid. So this deck card has to be somewhere in your list, just so you at least have a chance to play the game.
I agree.
And then for the last 3 cards, Call By. I mean, yeah. When you Call By Droll, you just kind of feel like you're on God mode, I'm not going to lie. So the card needs to be somewhere in your list. And, yeah, drawing this like with your combo in your hand, I just don't think you lose the game ever. Because this deck's already playing through, like, 2 hand traps and laying on a board most of the time. So this in your hand is just, like, stupid. Like, even if you end on a half board, you basically just, like, ripped, like, half the cards in your opponent's hand. Like, it's stupid. And the last 2 cards is D-Barrier and Sanctum. These are just our best thrust targets going first. I think there could be a world where like I don't know. Sometimes, like, for sure these cards are obviously really good. There are certain occasions though, like I do want something like a strike maybe for going first. But again, like we're already making like you want a good thrust target, I think, going first. Like we're already gonna play the card right. But I could see a world where like we find room for like 3 strikes or something like that, and then when we go first post side, we just put in the strikes over the thrust. But I don't know. Thrust has been really good for me. And in reality, like, your half words are good enough to where if you call the Xyz or Ritual half of their deck, or like against Fiendsmith, you call the Xyz half, whatever they're doing is just like weak enough, your board stops them most of the time, and then you win. And then obviously, like, this card's just broken, so that doesn't really need an explanation. So, yeah, that's pretty much the list.
All right. Any shout outs and thoughts for Orlando or anything?
Yeah, I think, like, okay, I guess first go over the thoughts for Orlando. So, like, for me, I think this is, like, the highest ceiling deck in the room, which is why I probably will take the deck. Also, I just love Rituals, like, bias aside, but I do actually think it's the best deck. I tried the Fiendsmith deck and stuff, but I think this deck just has, like, the most gas going into boards, and it's, like, the most unfair deck in the room when it goes first. Having said that, I don't think taking Malice or a Fiendsmith RYZEAL deck are incorrect, because those decks are also just broken. Like, I've talked about it playing people. If you take any of those 3 decks, like, you have a chance to do really well. Those decks all have like insane pros about them, so I wouldn't feel bad about taking any of the 3 decks this format. Anything else, like, you should probably just, like, not even go to the YCS at that point, because like every other deck is just scrambling to keep up, in my opinion. As far as shoutouts go, shout out to Land behind the camera. He's the GOAT. Shout out to my brother Tony right here. just vibing. Another huge shout out to Chris. Chris actually helped me with a lot with this list, so he's the GOAT for that for sure. And shout out to all my homies from Colorado. You know who you are. And shout out to the Dirtles Discord.
Shout out to Dirtles. Shout out to Trung. You're my GOAT.
Trung is the GOAT for real.
All right, on to Orlando.
Yes, sir. You'll see me in Top Cut.